My name is Samantha Miller. I'm 34 years old, a single mother, and I make my living as an emergency logistics coordinator, the kind of person people call when a flood wipes out a neighborhood, when a winter storm traps families without power, when everyone else is panicking and someone has to build a plan from nothing. I had spent years learning how to stay calm in disaster zones, but nothing prepared me for my sister's wedding. I was standing near table 12, holding a small velvet box with a gift I had spent 6 months saving for, when Julia lifted her champagne glass and smiled like she had been waiting all night to ruin me. My sister Samantha, she said, letting my name hang in the air, is proof that not every woman gets chosen. Single mother, unwanted by anyone, but still brave enough to show up alone. The room laughed before I could breathe. My father leaned back, red-faced from whiskey, and muttered loudly, "She's a used product." My mother covered his mouth, but not fast enough to hide her laugh. I looked down at my hands, at the tiny scratch my son had left on my wrist that morning when he hugged me too tight and told me to be brave. Then Jonathan Reed, Julia's groom, pushed back his chair. The metal legs screamed against the floor. He walked to the stage, took the microphone from Julia's hand, and said one sentence that made every guest go silent. "Before I tell you what he said, and what happened after I walked out, tell me, what time is it for you right now, and where are you watching from? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel." I should have known the night would turn ugly the moment I arrived at the old Union Station ballroom in downtown Chicago. The place used to be a train terminal, all brass clocks, marble floors, and tall arched windows that made every sound echo twice. Julia had chosen it because she loved saying her marriage was a new departure, and everyone laughed like that line was genius. I parked 3 blocks away because valet parking cost more than my weekly grocery budget, then walked in wearing the navy dress I had altered myself after Noah spilled apple juice on the hem the night before. At the entrance, a photographer stopped me and asked if I was with catering. I almost corrected him, but my mother appeared behind him, scanned me once, and said, "Samantha, don't make a scene tonight. Julia has worked very hard for this." I had not even spoken yet. That was how my family treated me. They reacted to the disaster they expected me to become. Julia had always been the polished one, the beautiful one, the daughter who knew how to turn every room toward her. I was the daughter who fixed broken things and then got blamed for noticing they were broken. When we were teenagers, Julia once spilled red nail polish on my scholarship interview blazer the night before my appointment, then cried to our parents that I had screamed at her for an innocent mistake. I wore a borrowed blazer 2 sizes too big and lost the scholarship. Years later, my mother still told that story as proof that I was too intense. That night, at Julia's wedding, I promised myself I would not fight. I had come because family pressure is a strange kind of chain. Even when it hurts you, you still feel guilty for wanting to break it. I had brought a gift, a small antique compass in a velvet case, because Jonathan restored old navigation tools, and Julia once mentioned he collected them. It was engraved with, "May you always find your way home." I thought it was thoughtful. I thought maybe, just maybe, someone would notice that I still knew how to love people who had never learned how to love me gently. Instead, when I reached the family table, my aunt looked at the empty chair beside me and asked, "No date again?" Before I could answer, my cousin whispered, "At least she didn't bring the kid. Weddings are expensive." I felt heat crawl up my neck. Noah was 6. He loved dinosaurs, pancakes shaped like stars, and asking if clouds had names. To them, he was not a child. He was evidence. Evidence that I had loved the wrong man, trusted the wrong promises, and chosen to keep my baby when the father disappeared. My father barely looked up from his drink. "Sit near the back," he said. "Julia doesn't need questions." I looked at the seating chart. My name had been moved from the family table to table 12, between two distant co-workers from Julia's marketing firm who did not know me. On my plate was a folded card that read, Samantha Miller, guest. Not sister of the bride, not family, guest. Have you ever walked into a room full of your own blood and felt like you were the stranger everyone had agreed not to acknowledge? I sat down, placed the velvet box beside my water glass, and watched Julia glide through the room in a silk gown that cost more than my car. She kissed cheeks, accepted compliments, and smiled at me only once, from across the room, with the same smile she used when she knew she had already won. Dinner passed like a slow punishment. Every time a server came by, I focused too hard on saying thank you because politeness gave my hands something to do. Around me, guests talked about honeymoon resorts, private schools, investment properties, and the kind of problems people call stressful when they have never had to choose between paying a power bill and buying antibiotics. I texted Noah's babysitter under the table. She sent me a photo of him asleep on the couch, one sock missing, his dinosaur blanket tucked under his chin. I stared at it longer than I needed to. It reminded me why I did not break. Then the speeches began. Jonathan's best man told a sweet story about meeting him in college. Julia's maid of honor cried through a memory about their first apartment. My mother spoke about how Julia had been born ready to shine, and my father raised his glass so high wine spilled on the tablecloth. I stayed quiet, clapping when everyone clapped, swallowing every old ache as if it were part of the meal. Then Julia stood. She tapped her glass with a fork, and the room turned toward her like flowers toward sunlight. I want to thank everyone for being here, she began, especially my beautiful husband, Jonathan, who somehow chose me despite knowing my family. Soft laughter. She looked perfect, effortless. Then her eyes found mine. And speaking of family, I have to mention my little sister, Samantha. I was older by 11 months. She knew that. Everyone knew that. The correction sat on my tongue, but I swallowed it. Julia tilted her head. Samantha has always been the independent type, and by independent, I mean no man has been able to tolerate her for more than a few months. A few people laughed. My stomach dropped. But honestly, she's inspiring, Julia continued. She proves you can make every wrong choice, become a single mom, show up alone to your sister's wedding, and still act like you're the strong one. The laughter grew louder. I heard my aunt say, "Oh my God," like Julia was daring and hilarious. Julia's smile sharpened. Noah is adorable, of course. We all love him. But let's be honest, Samantha's dating profile should come with a warning label. Emotional baggage. One child included. Father not found. The room cracked open with laughter. Something inside me went still. She had not just mocked me. She had mocked my son. I looked at my mother, waiting for horror, waiting for the one instinct I thought even she might still have. She was smiling into her napkin. My father shook his head and called out, "That's what happens when you buy used." Some guests laughed harder, others looked down. No one stopped him. I could hear blood rushing in my ears. I remembered Noah that morning, standing on a chair in the kitchen, helping me fasten my necklace with clumsy little fingers. "Are they going to be nice to you?" he had asked. I lied and said yes. Julia lifted her glass again. "But seriously, Sam, maybe tonight you'll catch the bouquet. Stranger things have happened. Maybe some man out there likes a fixer-upper." If humiliation had weight, I would have fallen through the floor. I pressed my nails into my palm and told myself not to cry, not here, not for them. But a question burned through me so sharply I almost said it out loud. How cruel does a family have to become before silence turns into self-betrayal? Then I saw Jonathan. He was not laughing. His face had gone pale, his jaw locked so tightly I could see the muscle twitch. Julia noticed too, and for 1 second her confidence faltered. She tried to recover with another bright laugh. "Oh, don't look so serious, honey. It's just family humor." Jonathan slowly stood. The entire ballroom shifted. Chairs creaked. Conversations died. Julia reached for his hand, but he stepped past her and took the microphone. Jonathan held the microphone like it weighed 100 pounds. For a moment, he only stared at Julia, and the silence stretched so long that someone near the bar coughed just to break it. "I need everyone to listen carefully," he said. His voice was calm, but it had the kind of calm I recognized from disaster briefings, the kind that comes right before the truth lands. Julia laughed nervously. "Jonathan, babe, what are you doing?" He did not look at her. He looked at me. "Samantha, I'm sorry." My throat tightened. No one in that room had apologized to me all night. Maybe in years. "I'm sorry," he repeated, "because I knew some of this before tonight. And I hoped I was wrong." Julia's smile vanished. "What does that mean?" Jonathan turned back to her. "It means your joke was not a joke. It was a pattern. And I have proof." The room inhaled at once. My father sat up. My mother's hand froze around her champagne flute. Jonathan reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out folded papers. "6 months ago," he said, "my nonprofit reviewed an emergency housing proposal after the South Bend floods. It was anonymous at first, but later I learned the coordinator behind it was Samantha Miller." A few people turned toward me. I stared at him, stunned. I had worked that project on unpaid nights after Noah went to bed, building supply routes for displaced families because the official system was moving too slowly. I never knew Jonathan had seen my name. "Her plan helped move 82 people into temporary housing within 48 hours, Jonathan continued. "It saved my organization from wasting money on a contractor who was overcharging desperate families." The room was dead quiet now. When I told Julia I wanted to invite Samantha to consult with us, Julia told me her sister was unstable, unreliable, jealous, and known for lying about her accomplishments. My skin went cold. Julia whispered, "Jonathan, stop." He did not. Then an anonymous email came to my board. It included private custody details about Samantha's son. It said hiring her would embarrass us. It said she had a history of using motherhood for sympathy. I gripped the edge of the table. Only my family had known those custody details. I had filed them after Noah's father disappeared, and Julia had once offered to help organize paperwork when I was too exhausted to stand. Jonathan unfolded another page. My IT director traced the email. It came from Julia's work laptop. Gasps spread through the ballroom like sparks catching dry grass. Julia's face drained of color, then flooded red. "That's not true." Jonathan looked at her with a sadness that hurt to watch. "I saw the metadata, Julia. I asked you about it privately 2 weeks ago. You told me Samantha had hacked you because she wanted attention." My father slammed his palm on the table. "This is a wedding, not a courtroom." Jonathan turned toward him. "Then maybe you should not have treated your daughter like evidence in a trial you held years ago." A few guests murmured. My mother whispered, "Richard, sit down." But my father kept glaring as if anger could still control the room. Jonathan continued, "I was prepared to handle this privately until tonight. But then you humiliated her in front of everyone. You mocked her child. You let your father call her used. And you expected me to laugh." Julia grabbed his arm. "I was nervous. I made a bad joke. You're embarrassing me." He gently removed her hand. "No, Julia. You embarrassed yourself. And you tried to destroy your sister's professional reputation because you were afraid I respected her." Every head turned toward Julia. Some of her coworkers looked horrified. Her boss, A silver-haired woman in a black dress slowly placed her champagne glass on the table and stared as if she were already rewriting Monday morning. I could barely breathe. For years, Julia had made me feel small in private and charmingly flawed in public. Now the private rot was under chandelier light. Jonathan faced the crowd. Before I say anything else, I want Samantha to know something. Your work mattered. Your name should have been on that grant. And after tonight, it will be. I felt the room tilt. For once, the silence around me was not neglect. It was recognition. I do not remember standing up. 1 second I was at table 12 with my hands shaking around a linen napkin, and the next I was walking toward the stage while every face in the ballroom followed me. Julia looked at me like I had betrayed her by existing at the wrong moment. My mother mouthed, "Don't." The same command she had used my whole life whenever the truth threatened to inconvenience the family. Don't upset your father. Don't make Julia feel guilty. Don't bring up the past. Don't tell people what happened. I took the microphone from Jonathan, and for the first time that night, my voice did not tremble. I was going to leave quietly, I said. That has always been my role in this family. I absorb the insult, I clean up the mess, and then I apologize for making everyone uncomfortable with my pain. No one moved. But tonight my son became part of the joke, and that is where my silence ends. Julia crossed her arms. You're being dramatic. I looked at her. No, Julia. Dramatic was spilling nail polish on my interview blazer and then crying until Mom blamed me for being angry. Dramatic was telling my first serious boyfriend that I cheated on him because you were jealous he helped me move apartments. Dramatic was offering to organize my custody papers, then using them to poison a professional opportunity I earned. My father stood again. Enough. I turned toward him. No, Dad. You have said enough for 34 years. A sound moved through the room, not quite a gasp, not quite approval, but something close to release. I faced the guests. My father called me used tonight. My mother laughed. My sister built a punchline out of my life. But there is something all of you should know. I am not ashamed of being a single mother. I am not ashamed of surviving a man who left. I am not ashamed of working late shifts, taking calls during storms, packing school lunches at midnight, or choosing my child every time life demanded I choose between dignity and approval. My eyes burned, but I did not cry. What I am ashamed of is how long I let these people convince me their cruelty was normal. Julia's boss stood slowly. Julia, she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Is that email allegation true? Julia snapped. This is none of your business, Marlene. The woman's expression hardened. You used company equipment to send private custody information to a nonprofit board while serving as our senior communications director. It became my business the moment you risked our firm's ethics record. The room shifted again. Julia understood then that this was not just a family embarrassment. This was professional damage. She reached for Jonathan. Please, tell them you misunderstood. Jonathan shook his head. I wanted to misunderstand. I opened the velvet box I had brought and pulled out the antique compass. The engraving caught the light. This was your wedding gift, I said quietly. I chose it because I thought marriage was about helping someone find their way home. But you already knew where home was, Julia. You just kept burning every bridge that did not lead back to you. Her lips parted, but no answer came. Then I took out my phone. My hands shook now, but I kept going. Since we are telling the truth, there is one more thing. Last week I received messages from a blocked number warning me not to attend tonight. They said if I came, I would regret it. I thought it was some cruel cousin, but the wording matched the anonymous email Jonathan described. I handed my phone to him. Jonathan read the messages and his face changed completely. Julia, he said, barely above a whisper. This was you too? Julia lunged forward. Give me that phone. That was the moment the ballroom stopped seeing her as a wounded bride. They saw panic. They saw guilt. They saw the mask slip. Julia tried to laugh again, but it came out jagged. This is insane, she said, looking around at the guests like she expected loyalty to appear on command. You're all really going to believe her? Samantha has always wanted my life. She's jealous because I got the wedding, the career, the man, the family approval. She walks in here with her sad little single mom story and suddenly everyone wants to clap for her? No one clapped. No one laughed. The absence of laughter seemed to scare her more than any accusation. My mother finally stood, her face pale. Julia, stop talking. Julia whipped toward her. Oh, now you want me to stop? You laughed too. Dad laughed too. Everyone laughed until Jonathan decided to play hero. My father muttered, Julia, sit down before you make it worse. But she was past control. No, Dad, you made her weak. You all did. You let her act like keeping that child made her noble. She should have disappeared quietly years ago instead of dragging her mistake into every room. Something broke in me, but it was not weakness. It was the last thread tying me to the hope that Julia might secretly love me underneath all the cruelty. Jonathan stepped between us. Do not call a child a mistake. His voice had gone cold. Julia stared at him. You're choosing her? I'm choosing the truth, he said. And I'm choosing not to marry someone who can speak about a child that way. The words landed like a chandelier crashing down. For 3 seconds, no one breathed. Then the whispers exploded. Julia's hand flew to her mouth. You don't mean that. Jonathan took off his wedding ring. They had exchanged rings earlier in a small private ceremony before the reception, something Julia had insisted on for photographs. He placed it on the table beside the microphone. I do. The irony was so sharp, it hurt. Julia shook her head violently. You can't humiliate me like this. Jonathan's eyes filled with tears, but his voice stayed steady. You humiliated yourself when you mistook cruelty for power. Marlene, Julia's boss, picked up her purse. I expect you in my office Monday morning, she said. Bring your laptop and do not delete anything. 2 of Julia's co-workers stood and followed her out. Then Jonathan's parents left their table. His mother walked straight to me, took my hands and said, Your son is lucky to have you. That small kindness nearly undid me. My own mother looked as if she had been slapped by someone invisible. My father's face turned gray as guests began gathering their coats. The reception was collapsing in real time, not because I had exposed Julia, but because Julia had exposed herself and given everyone a front row seat. The DJ cut the music. The servers froze near the kitchen doors. A bridesmaid started crying. Someone whispered that the marriage license had not been filed yet. Someone else said Julia's firm handled charity accounts, and this could become a scandal. Julia heard every word. The woman who had built her life on being admired was now trapped in a room where admiration had curdled into disgust. She turned to me with tears finally spilling over. Are you happy now? I thought about all the nights I had cried in my car before picking up Noah because I did not want him to see what my family did to me. I thought about every birthday where Julia got praise and I got advice. I thought about the anonymous email that could have cost me a career-changing opportunity. No, I said. I'm free. There's a difference. My mother approached me slowly. Samantha, please. This has gone too far. I looked at her, and for the first time I did not search her face for permission to feel hurt. It went too far when you laughed. She flinched. I didn't mean... You never do, I said. That has always been the excuse. Dad doesn't mean it. Julia is just joking. You are just tired. I am too sensitive. But somehow, I am always the one bleeding, and everyone else is always innocent. My father looked down. Julia sank into a chair, surrounded by white flowers and ruined applause. Jonathan picked up my velvet box and handed it back to me. "Keep it," he said. "You may need it for somewhere better than this." I closed my fingers around the compass. For the first time all night, I knew exactly where I was going. I did not storm out. I did not scream. I did not throw wine, flip tables, or beg anyone to admit they had hurt me. I simply walked to table 12, picked up my coat, and placed the untouched slice of wedding cake back on the plate. It looked absurdly perfect, a small white tower of sugar beside the wreckage of a family performance that had finally failed. Jonathan followed me to the lobby, but he did not try to turn the moment into something romantic or dramatic. That mattered. He stood a respectful distance away while I called Noah's babysitter and told her I would be home soon. My voice cracked only when Noah woke up in the background and asked, "Mommy, did you be brave?" I closed my eyes. "Yes, baby," I whispered. "I think I finally was." Behind me, the ballroom doors opened and closed as guests left in clusters. Some avoided my eyes because guilt is easier when it stays unnamed. Others nodded at me with quiet respect. One older woman I barely knew touched my shoulder and said, "I wish I had spoken up for myself 40 years ago." That sentence stayed with me longer than Julia's insult. Pain can echo, but courage can echo too. My mother came into the lobby a few minutes later. Her lipstick was smudged, and for once she did not look composed. "Samantha," she said, "I am sorry." I wanted those words to fix something. I wanted them to reach backward through time and sit beside the younger version of me who kept wondering what she had done wrong. But apologies do not become healing just because they arrive late. "Are you sorry because you hurt me?" I asked, "or because everyone saw?" She opened her mouth, closed it, and started crying. I did not hug her. That may sound cold to some people, but boundaries often look cruel to the people who benefited from you having none. My father did not come out. Julia did not come out. Later, I heard the wedding ended that night. Jonathan filed to annul the private ceremony before the license was processed. Julia was suspended from her job pending an internal investigation, and the nonprofit board reopened the consulting contract with my name attached. My father called twice the next week. I did not answer. My mother sent a message saying Julia was not in a good place and that family needed to heal. I replied with one sentence: "Healing cannot begin while everyone is still protecting the person holding the knife." 3 weeks later, I signed a 6-month contract with Jonathan's nonprofit, not because he rescued me, but because my work had earned the opportunity long before anyone in my family admitted it. The first thing I bought with the deposit was not a new dress, not a vacation, not anything glamorous. I bought Noah a sturdy blue bicycle with training wheels and a silver bell shaped like a rocket. When he rode it down our sidewalk, wobbling and laughing, I realized something simple and enormous. My life had never been the failure they described. It was full of work, love, exhaustion, peanut butter fingerprints, unpaid bills, bedtime stories, and the kind of loyalty my family had never understood. Julia lost a wedding, a reputation, and the illusion that charm could cover cruelty forever. My parents lost the daughter who kept making excuses for them, and I lost the shame they had spent years trying to hand me. That was the real revenge. Not destruction, not bitterness, not becoming cruel enough to beat them at their own game. The real revenge was refusing to carry a story that was never mine. Silence can feel peaceful, but sometimes silence is just a cage with softer walls. Speaking up did not destroy my family. It revealed what had already been broken. And maybe that is the lesson I want anyone watching to remember. You do not owe loyalty to people who only call you family when they need you quiet. Respect is not something you earn by shrinking. Love is not proven by how much humiliation you can survive. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand in front of the people who taught you to doubt yourself and say, No more. So tell me honestly, if you were standing in that ballroom, with everyone laughing and the truth burning in your throat, would you stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you grab your dignity and walk out too?